Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining me, Sterling, and Firefly again today. This episode is going to be all around safety. This is the number one thing that I get asked about when I tell people I live in a van, questions online. Everything comes down to how do you keep yourself safe and comfortable on the road? One, because van life has its own safety considerations in general, and two, because I am a solo female traveler, a lot of people who may be looking to get into this lifestyle may have similar questions. So hopefully I can impart some wisdom to you in some way or another. I am going to tell you my top 5 safety tips for living on the road. Then I have an interview with Nat and Abi of Let's Play Ride and Seek. They have some different perspectives on safety than I do, particularly because they're a queer interracial couple living on the road. Finally, I am going to share with you some equipment that I use to keep myself safe. Not only if somebody was to break in or something like that, but how do I keep myself safe if I break down on a back road and don't have any cell phone service? Things like that are a huge consideration, and so I'm going to show you some of the gadgets and gear that I use to get myself out of those situations in a safe way. So I hope you enjoy. Before we dive completely into that, a little bit about what I've been up to for the last couple weeks. I left you last week when I was driving frantically across the country to escape the Pacific Northwest fires. Since then, I've been in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan with my best friend who just had a baby. So I got to bond with that baby, and I also got to see the leaves change up there, which was really, really beautiful. It's an absolutely gorgeous area that I had not been able to really explore before. So I've been up there, just left. I'm now down in Iowa to see some friends, so it should be a fun couple weeks ahead as well. So that's what I've been up to, and now let's dive right into safety. My first van life safety tip is to distinguish between perceived fear and real fear. So perceived fear tends to focus on these big headline making, really scary things, right? A crazy wild animal attack, someone breaking into a van, violence against women, things like that, where they tend to kind of take over our head, and we're not thinking about how realistic this is, that something may happen, but how we perceive it and how it kind of takes us over. Now, of course, when I talk about violence against women, that is a major problem. Where the perceived fear comes into it is this idea of stranger rape, or somebody basically breaking into your van. That's a very, very, very small percentage of violence against women. It's usually going to be an intimate partner, a friend, an acquaintance, a family member. I worked in domestic and sexual violence for a number of years, so I will be donating 10% of the proceeds from this video. If you have been following me, you'll notice that I am actually upping my donation for each video from 5 to 10%. So watch the ads, let that go through, and I'll donate that to domestic violence shelter, because that is where most of the violence is happening against women. That being said, of course, there are things to do to keep yourself safe and mitigate some of that risk. The reason I bring up perceived versus real fear really is because perceived fear is the thing that tends to keep people in their house, not doing van life, not doing the things that they really want to be doing because they're taken over by that fear. It also masks what real fear can be. So if you're pulling into a situation and you're saying, wow, this really is scary to me, it's important to first take a step back and think, okay, is this scary to me because something is actually going on, or because I've been taught or have seen in the media these big stories that are now freaking me out, and I'm just perceiving that there may be risk here. So first, take that step back, take a breath, think through it, and then make some decisions.
Let the best show ever, Firefly, which this girl is named after, explain just a little more about what I feel about violence against women.
If you take sexual advantage of her, you're going to burn in a very special level of hell. A level they reserve for child molesters and people who talk at the theater.
Don't do it. Just don't do it. That's all. Then it would end. Just don't do it.
My mom is always telling me intention, attention equals no tension. So I don't think that's her saying, but she heard it somewhere and she repeats it all the time to me. She even made me a sticker about that, and it's so true. So that is my van life safety tip number 2, is that you always want to be paying attention to things and moving with intentionality. This is what happens when you don't do that. I was trying to go into a campsite, tried to make a really close turn, and I didn't get out. I didn't look at the turn. I was tired. I knew it was sketchy, and I just did it anyway without paying much attention to what could go wrong. Ended up on a stump. It could have been a lot worse. Luckily, I just scraped up this side panel, but I had no service, you know, was in kind of an area where I felt a little bit sketched out by the people nearby. And so it could have been a very bad situation, and it really would have been 100% fixed if I had just been paying a little bit more attention. This goes for every single thing. When you're pulling into a campsite, have you done the research? Are there reviews on this campsite? What kind of people are around you? What are the surroundings around you? Is there a tree right above you where if it gets really windy, a branch might fall on top of you? Do you have enough propane in case it gets really cold and you need to heat up the van? Or do you have enough water where you're not going to run out of water? It's every single thing you do every single day in van life needs to be intentional. Listen to the sounds your van is making. Get it, you know, tuned up, get oil so that you have less likelihood of breaking down on a back road in the middle of nowhere. Move slowly with intentionality and pay very close attention to everything around you at all times. Van life safety tip number 3, always have an exit plan. So when I park in a campsite, I always make sure that I can get out easily, so I'm not doing like a 30-point turn just to try to leave the campsite. I also know exactly where my keys are at all times, and so that if I need to, you know, get up in the middle of the night, run to the cab and drive away, I know exactly how to do that. I keep the front seats clear of belongings so that I can get through there, and try to keep the van in general fairly tidy at the end of the night. So if I do have to get up and move, I'm not, you know, frantically trying to put away a wine bottle that's gonna, you know, fall down and break all over everything. I also try to keep all of the things that I really care about in the van at night. If I'm in a super safe situation, great, you know, I can leave my awning out, or, you know, different things like that. But if I feel sketchy at all, then I really make sure to be completely self-contained at the end of the night. I always lock my doors, no matter what, at night. I know some people do, you know, sleep with their back doors open, and it's amazing. This is part of the reason I got the skylight, is so that I could look at the stars while still keeping my doors locked. I also, of course, have a dog here who acts as a great alarm system for me, and so if somebody is trying to break in, then I have that little bit of time to jump in and drive away from that situation. All right, my 4th van life safety tip is to maintain a sense of privacy. So for me, that means that sometimes I don't get out of the van when I pull into a campsite. I'll walk Sterling before I get there, and then I'll just put right up my privacy covers and go in the back, and therefore nobody knows that I'm alone. My van is also very indistinguishable from other vans, and I chose not to put any like big logos or anything on there because I don't want people to be able to look me up online and see that I'm traveling alone while they're right next to me. My last vehicle was very distinct looking, and so people would like randomly look me up online, and I had my business name on there, and so obviously anybody would be able to see that I was alone in that vehicle. So for this time around, I chose not to do that. I also don't have a lot of windows, so people can't look in on me. And then I never ever post my location online while I am still at that location. All right, my 5th and final safety tip for you today is to have a support team. Somebody who you can send your location to. I have a GPS locator that I'll tell you more about later that sends my location if I'm out of service. Also, my sister has me tracked on Google Maps, so you can send somebody your location and they can look it up whenever they want. And that is great for when I'm in service and she just wants to check on where I ended up that night. I check in with with my family on a regular basis, with my friends on a regular basis. I always let somebody know when I'm doing a hike or, some other activity, kind of where I am and what time I expect to get back there. That way, if something does happen to me and I completely just drop out of contact, people would definitely know within a few hours, a day at most, that something weird had happened because I set that norm up and have that team behind me. All right, everybody, so that's my 5 tips for keeping yourself safe on the road. Stick around for the interview with Nat and Abi, and then also for an overview of the equipment and gear that I use to specifically keep myself safe on the road. First, a quick look at what not to do, maybe what to do, what not to do. I don't know, you decide.
Built in Bellevue, Lamont, Iowa. One of a kind. Wow, for sale.
So funny. The back seat. Oh my god.
All right. Hello, Nat and Abi. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before we launch into talking about safety, will you just introduce yourself a little bit and let everyone watching kind of know how you ended up in van life?
Yes, so I'll start. I'm Natalie, identify as she, her. I am a wife, a dog mom, a travel and poet enthusiast, and I've been living in the van now for almost 2 years with this one.
I'm Abigail, and I'm a photographer, artist, avid travel lover, dog mom, and wife. I grew up in Pennsylvania and moved to Charleston, South Carolina, where I met this one.
Yeah, so we ended up on the road. Basically, we decided that our life that we were living at the time was not aligned with what our heart wanted for us, the knowledge of what we knew life could be. And so she had been traveling for a while, and I was wanting to get out of the space that I grew up in. So yeah, we looked around, did some research. We found out that van life was the best way for us to be able to do this full time and live an alternative life. So we bought a van shortly after that. So been on the road since.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I talk a lot about intentional living, and it sounds like that's what you two.
Oh yes, absolutely.
That this is the life I want. We're going for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I kind of was introduced to your ideas around safety through the Woman on the Road podcast, through your episode, where you were able to really articulate, I think, in a beautiful way that a lot of times some of the loudest voices in van life tend to come from white, straight, cisgender, whatever people who may have some different perspectives on the safety question that we all get over and over of how safe we feel in van life. So I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, of how your perspective may change as a queer interracial couple.
I think being queer and interracial on the road presents its challenges in a mostly fear-based way. I think more so for me being queer and also a person of color, especially in rural areas. I think that automatically when I see this and you go into town, you see these campaign signs studded on, yards and, on bumper stickers, it kind of like decides for me, it heightens or lowers my flight or flight response, which is, it's unfortunate to have to feel that way. But so a lot of the times Abby will be the one that kind of goes into a store, if that's the case, first, or I may not even approach a place because it's just something that's kind of innate inside of my head. And it's hard for both of us, but I think that that's been the biggest challenge, is knowing where we feel safety. And it's not so much that it's not safe to be on the road, but that idea of safety concern is definitely heightened for our community, I think. So that's been the biggest challenge, is trying to kind of navigate through narrow minds or narrow, ideas of what people think of us being on the road, and, deciding or discerning how much of that we should be filtering out when we are, going from place to place.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And now, as someone who grew up experiencing more of these intersectionalities, as a person of color, as somebody who, presents as more queer, as you talked about on that podcast, than Abby, who kind of passes more. How do you notice a difference between the two of you when you're like going through situations of that kind of gut response to things, choosing campsites, anything like that?
I mean, I definitely feel like I am more easygoing and more go with the flow, and that might be just a result of, you know, the way I look and present. You know, at a first glance, nobody would know offhand that I'm queer. So yeah, I definitely think we are very different in that aspect, but we also balance each other out.
Yeah, I think it helps me knowing that she kind of goes in with it, you know, and with like a simple flow. I've always been more worrisome anyways. And so, you know, tying that in with trying to feel comfortable in my skin as who I am, you know, it's a challenge. It really is. And I think that's something that people may not realize that don't also deal with being queer or being a person of color, because that it just comes naturally. It's stigma, it's misunderstanding, it's miseducation. And so, you know, it's hard, but I think that pushes us more to do what we do because we want to change that kind of status quo. So, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's so valuable to have your perspective as one that's out and saying, look, we may have to think about these things, but we're doing it anyway. We're going for it anyway.
Absolutely.
And
Exactly.
for other
for
people
sure.
who may be in your same situation to see that, it has to be just like a very powerful thing. I heard you mention that you have Abby kind of go in first to situations maybe in small towns. Is there anything else that you do specifically to help keep yourself safer on the road?
Yes, definitely. We always get to a campground or campsite early before dark. We always back in to that spot so that if needed, we can pull out quickly. We also don't post our current location on social media. We wait until we leave a location and then we might tag it or post about it. And our dogs are a really great security system. So they'll alert us if anything, you know, if anybody's near the van or whatnot. So we feel a lot more comfortable with them around. And I think even above all of that, we really trust our gut. So if something doesn't feel right, you know, we'll have a little intuitive sense about it, and then we leave. So
yeah, I think that's anybody, but we definitely, you know, we make sure we check all those boxes every time we're going into a campsite. And yeah, I think also we haven't done it yet, but we would recommend and want to do self-defense course. I think that's awesome for anyone. You know, you want to be able to feel like you can, if you're in a situation that you can, you know, you can do something about it.
Yeah, I did one years ago, a self-defense course, and it actually paid off. I got mugged and then got out of it. So
yeah, that's right.
But that's another reason why we want to do it, a recent one. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad you took that class.
Yeah, seriously.
So you talked about small towns. I wanted to ask you about like the nomadic community in general. When you come across fellow nomads, have you found them to be pretty welcoming? And is there anything that we can do as fellow travelers, you know, if we're caravanning with, you know, either a queer couple, a person of color, something like that, to help make you feel more comfortable with us as travel companions or fellow nomads in similar, you know, areas?
Yeah, I think we personally on the road, we haven't really dealt with any situations where we felt like maybe we weren't being treated a certain way or a right way. It definitely happens, but we've been fortunate that's not been the case. But I think for people that are on the road and want to know how to help, I think listening to our stories, engaging and absorbing our stories, integrating our stories into the main van life and nomadic hubs that are on social media is super important. That's a way for you to amplify our voices and ally. If you don't know how, educate yourself. We very much recommend Naomi that runs Diversify Van Life. It's a great page that she started that really helps get the word out for us and our voices heard. She's really doing an amazing job at that. Also, we have a Van Life Pride page that we run that's specifically for queer community. So there's a lot of people connecting on there and that you can educate yourself to learn more about that. I think going into the future when we have gatherings, making it more all-inclusive and open and more community-driven, all of those things, because I think our community, the nomadic community in general, has an inspiring way to live and live more intentionally. And, you know, especially now with people losing jobs this year, people are really looking into this lifestyle a lot more. So I think if we can integrate our whole community to, you know, appreciate each other, all of us, then we are an example for the world in the way that we're living. So.
Yeah, and in as far as in person goes, if you see us on the road, give us a peace sign or a wave.
You won't miss us. So, we're here.
One thing that we tend to do is, especially Natalie, when we're driving down the road or we see another nomad, another van or bus or whatever, we give them a little wave or a peace sign.
Yes.
Some people will give us one back, but not everybody. So
most people though.
Give us a wave.
Yeah, most people do. And I think it's happening. I think that the shift is happening and more people are trying to do this. And I see this change. It's beautiful. We have a long way to go, but it's shifting into that. So that's an awesome thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, actually, Naomi is going to join me on the next episode that I film.
Oh, awesome.
Her on the road. So yeah, I love her. She is such a great voice for this community and such a great person.
Absolutely.
So if you had any words of advice for people who may be in your situation or similar situations, or just people in general thinking about getting out on the road, what would your advice be to them on how to feel powerful out there, to feel safe out there?
Well, I would definitely say, I think the biggest thing with safety is you can't guarantee safety, but you can definitely guarantee like trying to live a full life. And I think that that's important first, because especially us trying to be comfortable in our skin, I think it's so important for us to get out there on the road, and the ones that are already out there on the road feel comfortable and confident that you can let go of the fear to tell your story, because the more that happens, the more that we're going to open up other people that think about it. We got to be those heroes for the people that have these dreams, and do that. I think we're always going to be vulnerable, but you can do these practical things for safety, but you have to be comfortable in your own skin, and you have to provide yourself with a life that you want to live. And so that, don't deny that. I think that, strength can combat fear, and that's going to drive people to see how powerful that is, and they're going to want to live that life because of the way that you're just openly out there, you're proud of what you're doing. So I think that that's important for people to know. You cannot guarantee your safety, but you should definitely go for it.
Yeah, that's some very amazing and powerful perspective. Thank you for that. So before I let you go here, can you let people know where and how to find you so that they can follow your adventures?
Yes.
Go ahead.
We are Let's Play Ride and Seek on Instagram and YouTube, and we have a website, www.letsplayride-and-seek.com, where you can see a little bit more about what we do.
Perfect. And I will link all of that below. So thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Hopefully I will be able to see you on the road soon.
We would love that.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, now that we've talked about safety more generally, let's get into specifics of what kind of equipment can help you out if you get into a bind while out in van life. So I like to go off-road quite a bit, and so I always have a portable shovel with me. It's a little folding shovel that can get really small, but will be able to dig me out, and traction boards. So if I get into deep sand or slick area, I have enough traction to get my van out by myself. I also always carry a portable power bank with me that allows me to jump start the car if I need to. If I lose power overnight at a campsite or what have you, I can always jump start myself and not have to call other people in. I also carry a device called Fixed. This plugs into your car and reads any engine codes that you have, so that'll help you decide if you are having an issue with the car, how important it is to get somebody else out there and get your car out, or if you'll be able to bring it into the mechanic on your own. I contact people when I'm out of service using my Somewhere Global Hotspot. This global hotspot will turn your phone into a satellite phone and allow you to text anybody that's downloaded that app. So again, important to have that support team who's kind of looking out for you and knows to have that app downloaded if you're going out of service. You can also use an SOS button on that, which will get help right away. It's important to me to have a global hotspot that allows the full text to go out, however, because if you just send an SOS, it may take a while for rescue to actually happen, because they aren't, some people will accidentally push that button, will push it for things that aren't that serious. So they have to do this whole side diagnosis on the search and rescue side. Whereas if you're able to send a text to somebody and say, hey, I broke my leg, I need some help, or, whatever it is, then you might get help a lot sooner. the somewhere, you can buy the device, and there is also a monthly plan that you have to have that will allow you to have certain amounts of text messages and also location sharing where you can just send your GPS coordinates out. So I love the somewhere. It's worked great for me so far. As far as other safety equipment goes, I do have some stickers on my windows that say "Smile, you're on camera," as well as on the back. This will act hopefully as a deterrent for people like the people who vandalized my van a few weeks ago of, you know, if people think they're being watched. I also do want to get cameras, but I'm really struggling to decide which one to get. I would like a dash cam that shows out and inside the cabin. So if any of you have recommendations on one of those that you love, please drop it in the comments below. As far as if people come in, you know, everybody wants to know what weapons you have in the van. I'm not going to necessarily share all of the weapons that I have. I don't want to like give away my whole game plan here if somebody breaks in, but I will share a little bit of my weapons philosophy that I am a small woman. I'm 5'2", and I can be overpowered fairly easily. Therefore, any weapon that I have, if I'm not prepared to use it in a pretty lethal manner or pretty, you know, end them manner right away, then that weapon can be taken and used against me. So keep that in mind when you are looking at weapons. Are you prepared to use something like a gun right off the bat? Or is it something that might be taken from you? Also, the legality of certain kinds of weapons. So in a lot of states, it is illegal to pepper spray someone or use bear spray on someone. So if you have something like that, just keep in mind that you might be getting yourself into trouble if someone's breaking in and you seriously injure them. Then again, if someone's breaking in to cause you harm, you know, you never know. So the two things that I will show you that I have are a taser and a police nightstick that I got while hitchhiking in Alaska when I was like 21, which is a funny long story, but I won't tell it right now. But yeah, so these are two things that I feel fairly comfortable with and that I keep, you know, within arm's reach if I am sleeping. And, you know, if somebody starts to break in, hopefully Sterling will let me know and give me time to use the things that I have to get out. But hopefully, you know, with all the safety precautions that I am taking, with, you know, having my little alarm system, with keeping my keys nearby, with being able to just drive away in most situations, I'm hoping, obviously, that I never have to use those weapons. And I hope that you don't either. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Firefly and I on Safety on the Road. I will link all the products that I used below, so check that out if you're interested in any of these safety products. And then again, remember, please, please don't let perceived fear keep you back from living your best life. I'm going to be publishing an ebook that's completely free on my website. I will link that below as well, on living intentionally, living powerfully. Check that out if you're interested, and always feel free to reach out with any questions or comments or anything that you would like to see in the future for future episodes. Next time, I will be filming a video on how to keep yourself mentally safe, aka how to self-care on the road, and I will be joined by Naomi from Irie to Aurora, a really wonderful woman who is just one of the, I would say, most pleasurable people to talk to in this community. Super smart, super passionate about van life, and she's going to have a lot of really cool stuff to say about how to keep yourself feeling happy and comfortable when you're on the road. So I hope that you join me again. Please subscribe, like, comment, share this video with your friends, and I will see you soon. Have a great rest of your day.